There's a moment right before you can feel the no you want to say. It's right there, but underneath it is this fast, almost automatic calculation. What's this going to cost me if I actually say it? Welcome to Human Evolution, the podcast where growth gets real, patterns get exposed, and things start to look a little different. I'm Jodie Thaler, integrative neuroregulation coach and the founder of MindDrop. This is where we have the conversations that don't always get said out loud, unpacking emotional regulation, neuroscience, and the patterns shaping how you think, feel, and show up in the world, and what it really takes to change. For the self-aware, heart-led humans and high performers who are done running on autopilot and ready to live life on purpose. Let's go. So let's talk about what that moment actually is. Because here's what a lot of people have been told. People pleasing is a self-esteem problem, or it's a boundaries problem. And so typically the advice that comes is something like this: just say no more often. Know your worth. Stop letting people walk all over you. My guess is you've probably tried that. You've probably sat with it, understood it. You may have even traced it all the way back to the first time in childhood that it came up. Then the next time that something like this happened, that calculation was running in the background anyway. The yes came out instead of the no, or the no came out and something uncomfortable arrived right behind it. So the typical advice didn't stick because it was aimed at the wrong layer. Remember last episode we talked about the 4 layers. People pleasing isn't just a self-esteem problem. It's a nervous system response and conditioned response. And specifically, it's your guard dog doing exactly what it was built to do. Remember, that's our second layer. So I want you to think back to the last episode, all about the guard dog, layer 2, right? This is your amygdala. It fires fast. It acts before the CEO, your prefrontal cortex, knows what's even happening. It doesn't wait to catch up with it and say, hey, this is going on. What do we do about it? It just goes. That's why we call it the guard dog. It's protecting us. And this is what's really interesting about the guard dog. It doesn't only just fire at physical threat. It goes off and fires at social threat as well. This is what we experience as rejection, disappointment, or even conflict. The possibility that someone might pull away, go cold, or see you differently. Naomi Eisenberger's neuroimaging research at UCLA showed that social rejection activates the same region of the brain as physical pain. So the dorsal anterior cingulate cortex, which is the area that processes the distress of physical pain, lights up the same way in the brain when you're excluded or rejected socially. The guard dog does not distinguish. So in that moment before you say no, when that calculation fires, that isn't always overthinking. Okay, this can be your guard dog reading social threat and responding to it exactly the way it was built to respond to danger, like actual physical danger. Doesn't get the difference between the two. And this is before the CEO even has a thing to say about it, right? And before it can intervene, before you've consciously decided anything. The guard dog alone doesn't always explain, though, why this is so sticky, why it's so hard to shift and change. We've got the layer 3, which is the app. And at some point, usually earlier on in your childhood, your nervous system learned something. And that could be that keeping the peace was safer than disrupting it. Or that a certain version of you, like the agreeable one or the one that didn't need much or who handled it all, that version of you was the version that got to belong, was approved of, and got to stick around. That learning didn't get stored as thought that you can access and update. It got encoded as a conditioned response, running automatically below conscious awareness most of the time in a completely different environment long after the original conditions that created it have passed. So now something comes up. You're presented with this event where you want to say no. And before any of that gets processed consciously, the app begins to run its program. And that might be whatever that could look for you. It could be like, hey, keep it smooth, read the room, make everything okay. And because that up is running, the next thing that runs with it is the yes that comes out of your mouth, even when you're thinking no. And this is the part that makes it really, really sticky and really challenging to shift, especially if you're only working on a singular layer. Sometimes that yes, even though we don't want it to be a yes, we want it to be a no, but that yes actually brings genuine relief. The situation smooths over or de escalates. The other person is fine, happy, elated, even depending on what the situation is. And your nervous system gets to chill out. And that outcome actually gets encoded too. The brain registers that worked. We're going to do that again. The app doesn't just run because of old conditioning, it keeps getting reinforced in the present every time it delivers this short term regulation. Because those moments that we're taken out and we get that relief, we're taken out of that discomfort, that is a regulation. Now, it's not necessarily an adaptive or positive one that's going to serve us well in the long term, but it is still regulation. This is why it feels like the right call in the moment, even though you know it isn't. It's a reward circuit doing exactly what reward circuits do. And sometimes when the no does actually come out, that discomfort that arrives behind it, it's almost like an alarm system going off. So the app is registering that something it's been wired to protect against just happened. Not always fun to sit with. And underneath all of this is our operating system. And remember, this is our layer 4 or level 4. Belonging and approval aren't just nice to haves. They are two of the most fundamental human needs that the nervous system is wired to protect. Belonging, the sense that you have a place, that you're included, that you won't be left out, and there is safety in this. And approval, which is the sense that you are accepted, you're not too little, you're not too much, and that you're okay pretty much just as you are. You're the Goldilocks of it, right? They are human needs that we have. For a lot of people, the OS got built around earning both of those things. Doing enough, being easy enough, not needing too much. And when that's the foundation that you have in your values and your beliefs, saying no doesn't just feel uncomfortable. It runs up against something that the OS is built to protect. So that background check fires. Does this version of me, the one who just held that boundary, the times that we do manage to do it, match what I believe keeps me safe, keeps me belonging, keeps me approved of? If the answer is no, even again, it's below conscious awareness, there's going to be a conflict every time. This is why the pattern survives inside. You can see it coming, you can name it and understand it, and you even know where it started back from whatever year in your childhood. You can pick all of that. But that guard dog still fires, the app still runs, and the OS still checks, and that pattern is super sticky and still holds and is reinforced consistently with the comfort and relief that you find from having to sit in that discomfort of having to say no. None of this is because you haven't tried hard enough, because I guarantee you a people pleaser has typically tried to say no on multiple occasions. A lot of the time when we're working on things like this, we're trying to understand it. We're trying to think our way through it. And it's never reaching the actual layer or layers that it lives in. And this is why the pushing through and sometimes that reframing and just deciding to be different, like, hey, I'm just going to say no. That's never always enough. All of that is aimed at the CEO layer. And that CEO is completely on board. It wants all these things. We consciously want to be able to say no, but our CEO doesn't get there. The guard dog's already fired, the app's already running. And by the time the CEO actually comes back to the room, everything's like happened and it's already been moved on. You're like, man, have you ever had that moment where you go after the fact, you're like, I should have just said no. I really wanted to just say no. I really don't want to do this. But you can't think your way out of something that isn't living in your thinking. What do we actually do to change this pattern? Because that's all it is, remember, it's just a pattern, it's a conditioned response. The guard dog needs to learn through actual repeated experience that social discomfort is not danger. That someone being momentarily disappointed in us or needing a minute to adjust because they're not used to us saying no doesn't actually cost you now what it once did back then. There may have been a real safety reason why you did what you did and why you've behaved that way ever since. which is a good thing. It was put in place to keep you safe. But that's not necessarily what's happening right now. Therefore, this pattern is actually not serving you any longer. Moving forward, the app either needs to be updated or deleted with a new one installed, one that was actually built in your current environment for who you are now with what you actually need now. So anything that was back then, we don't analyze it. Analyzing it doesn't work. We know this. We need to clear it and we need to rewire it because that's the level that it lives at. But then we also need to work with the operating system. The OS needs to come into alignment with the version of you that includes someone who can hold their ground without it threatening their sense of belonging or approval. This isn't just a mindset shift, and it isn't just a biological process. In this particular instance with people pleasing, it's actually both. And we're working with all 4 levels at the same time. We're working with the CEO, the guard dog, the app, and the operating system. And that's what it takes to actually break this pattern. So as we wrap up today's episode, people pleasing isn't a character flaw or a weakness. It isn't something that you just need to push through or decide your way out of. You can do all of that, and quite often you'll get the bounce back, and you still won't typically see progressive change that sticks over time. It's actually a nervous system response that made complete sense at one point, and it's been getting reinforced ever since. And remember, reinforcement means it is likely to occur more often and stronger when it does. We want to unreinforce it. We want to do the opposite of that. That's not actually a term that we use, but that's what we're wanting to aim for, okay? As it's being reinforced, the guard dog fires at social threat the same way it fires at physical danger. The app runs this program that was downloaded well before you even had a conscious say in it. The operating system checks every new version of you against the old beliefs about what keeps you safe and belonging. And your CEO, smart and aware and completely on board as it is, doesn't get there in time to manage any of it. Not in the moment. All right. So it's not a you problem. It's a wiring problem. And it's been a survival tactic and instinct that you've had for years and years and years. But the cool thing about it being a wiring problem is that wiring can change. It can change. It just needs to work at the right layers and the right integration to be able to do it. On our next episode, we're going to go into why insight alone doesn't create change. And I know what you might be thinking now. You've had a bit of this explained to you already in this episode today. You understand it a little bit differently than you did maybe 20 minutes ago. And shouldn't that be enough to start shifting it? That question is exactly what we're getting into, because insight is real and it matters. It's the starting point, as is awareness. And there's a difference between those two. But there's a very specific reason it's never been enough on its own. And once you hear that and you understand that gap between knowing and doing, it's going to make a lot more sense for you. And then you can create the change that you're after. We'll see you there. Hey, my beautiful friend. Thanks for hanging out and listening to today's episode. If you want to keep the momentum going, head over to the vault at minddrophq.com/podcast. It's where all the tools, resources, and gold from the show are kept, so your growth doesn't stop when the episode ends. If this episode sparks something in you, share it with a friend or someone who needs to hear this. The more people having these conversations, the bigger the ripple we create. And if you haven't already, hit subscribe so you never miss an episode. It really means the world. Until next time, keep being your gorgeous, unstoppable self.